You see it in the grocery store all the time, right? The pineapple. But I'm willing to bet it holds some secrets you've never heard before. From a wild past as a royal status symbol to its bizarre biology and even a secret weapon it uses against you. Okay, let's get into it. So, first off, a simple question. If I asked you how a pineapple grows, what image pops into your head? If you're like a whole lot of people, you're probably picturing a tall, tropical tree with pineapples hanging down like coconuts. You are definitely not alone. This is all over the internet. It's a classic case of collective misremembering. I mean, it just feels right, doesn't it? A big spiky fruit like that should hang from a sturdy branch. But the reality? Well, it's a lot stranger. And here it is, the truth. Pineapples don't grow on trees at all. They grow right out of the ground on these low, leafy, spiky plants. It's actually a terrestrial herb in the Bromeliad family. Think of it like a giant fruit-bearing thistle. Kind of changes the picture, huh? So that begs the question, why the pine in pineapple if it has nothing to do with a pine tree? Well, the name itself is basically a historical mistake. Back in the 14th century, the English word pineapple actually meant a pine cone. So when explorers first saw this new fruit, they thought, hey, that looks like a pine cone, and the name stuck. It's wild, right? They had to invent the term pine cone much later just to stop everyone from getting confused. Okay, so we've got where it comes from sorted out. Now, let's talk about its incredible journey through history, because this was not always a common fruit. For centuries, it was the absolute ultimate symbol of power and wealth. It all kicks off in 1493, when Columbus brings one back to Spain. King Ferdinand tried it, declared it his favorite fruit, and just like that, European royalty became obsessed. But growing one in chilly Europe, it required these massive, super expensive glass houses. By the 1700s, having a pineapple wasn't just about food. It was a public declaration of your status and your hospitality. So why all the fuss? It was all about rarity. It could take 2, sometimes 3 years to ripen a single pineapple in one of those European glass houses. This made them so unbelievably valuable that people would literally rent them for an evening. You'd use it as a centerpiece at your party to show everyone how wealthy you were. I mean, can you imagine? You'd show it off, but actually eat it? No way. So it's got this crazy cultural history, but what about its biology? Because honestly, this is where things get really weird. What exactly is a pineapple anyway? The answer is way more complicated than you'd think. See, a pineapple isn't a single fruit in the same way an apple or a cherry is. It's what botanists call a syncarp, or a multiple fruit. It's literally a massive fusion of many, many separate fruits that have all grown together into one big unit. So, just how many fruits are we talking about here? Get this. A single pineapple is the result of anywhere from 100 to 200 individual flowers, and the little berry from each of those flowers has fused together. That's right, what you're holding is actually a cluster of hundreds of tiny fruits in one. And you can actually see the evidence right there on the skin. Every single one of those geometric eyes on the outside of a pineapple, that's the leftover scar from one individual flower. You're basically looking at the ghost of a giant flower cluster all squished together into one fruit. So that's the big question, right? How did this super rare, biologically bizarre fruit go from being a rental for kings to something we just toss in our shopping carts? Well, that story is basically about an industrial revolution, all centered on this one weird plant. And you can thank a guy named James Dole for that. In the early 1900s, he went to Hawaii and set up these enormous pineapple plantations. His big idea was to use industrial-scale farming and new canning technology to make the pineapple cheap and accessible for everybody. But, of course, there was a huge problem. Pineapples take forever to grow. We're talking 18 to 30 months. That incredibly long wait creates a massive financial risk. How can you possibly run a modern factory-like operation when your product is so slow and unpredictable? Part of the solution was just picking the right parts of the plant to grow from. You know how we might plant the leafy top, the crown, at home? Well, commercial growers almost never do that. It takes the longest to fruit. They use slips and suckers. These are little shoots from the plant that mature way faster, sometimes by a full year. That really helps shorten that risky investment period. But the real game changer, it wasn't about planting methods, it was about chemistry. The biggest problem was getting all the plants to flower at the same time, and they found the solution in ethephon, a compound that releases ethylene gas. And ethylene is a natural plant hormone that basically acts like a start flowering now trigger. So here's how they turned it into this perfectly predictable process. Once the plants are mature, they spray them with ethephon. This forces the entire field to flower and then produce fruit in perfect sync. It completely transforms unpredictable farming into a scheduled manufacturing-like operation. Suddenly, you can plan harvests with incredible precision. Okay, we've gone through its wild history, its industrial takeover, but there is one last secret we have to talk about. And it's one you might have actually experienced yourself. It's the reason why sometimes it feels like a pineapple is biting you back. You know that feeling, right? You eat a bunch of fresh pineapple and your mouth gets all tingly and raw. For most of us, that's not an allergic reaction. Nope, that's the fruit's own built-in defense mechanism going to work on you. Well, the culprit has a name, bromelain. And it's this powerful cocktail of enzymes called proteases. And a protease's only job is to break down proteins. So when you take a bite of pineapple, that bromelain immediately starts breaking down the first proteins it can find, which happen to be in your mouth. This is the exact same reason bromelain is the active ingredient in commercial meat tenderizer. It's literally digesting the tough proteins in the meat. It's also why you can never put fresh pineapple in Jell-O. The enzymes just digest the gelatin proteins and turn it into a soupy mess. The good news? Cooking completely destroys these enzymes, which is why canned pineapple is totally fine. So that weird tingling sensation in your mouth? Yeah, it's not in your head. While you are eating a piece of fresh pineapple, its enzymes are actively breaking down the proteins on the surface of your tongue, your cheeks, and your lips. So, in a very real, very literal sense, the pineapple is eating you back. And there you have it. It starts as a myth about a fruit from a tree, becomes a symbol of royalty so precious you'd only rent it, turns out to be a bizarre fusion of hundreds of berries, gets transformed by an industrial marvel of modern agriculture, and to top it all off, it's a fruit armed with meat-eating enzymes. So, the humble pineapple, turns out it's anything but simple. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secrets are hiding out there in plain sight, in the most common, everyday things we think we know?